Graduated December of 1980 with the Bachelor of Accountancy. And every time I put that on a resume, everyone's like, oh, you graduated with Business Administration, you know, BA. That's what it stands for. No. I put in a lot of accounting hours to be able to put B of A on that resume. But let me give you some background. I grew up in Tularosa, for those of you who know Tularosa, small town. And I remember actually thinking about going to the Air Force Academy. And I had a fellow classmate says, like, Air Force, you know who you're going to be competing against? You know, to go to the Air Force Academy? And I said, I don't think it's going to matter who's going to be going there. I should be able to compete with anyone. And if you go in with the attitude that I can't compete, then more than likely, I mean, could you imagine telling an athlete, oh, you can't compete against this other school? So like, well, we'll just chalk that game up for a loss. It's the same thing when you're going into the business. If you think you can't compete with others, you're at a disadvantage. So I was what I'd call maybe now maybe non-traditional, but it took me 5.5 years to get out. So the question on does tuition stay for those working? But actually, it was an advantage for me because I was able to work the co-op program through the Treasury Department. So I was a national bank examiner, as some of my friends called me, a junior G-man. But that afforded me the ability to actually graduate with no debt, because you know the parents maybe had the money, but they essentially said you're supporting yourself. You're supporting yourself going through school. So being able to afford to get to school through the co-op program and to be able to graduate with no debt was amazing. Now, tuition rates have gone up, living expenses have gone up. The ability to be able to graduate with no debt nowadays is less likely. And I'll come back to the internship because I think that is a major item for a student if they can graduate with some experience. So. Who'd I go to work with? Well, you probably have heard of them. They're a small oil and gas company, now known as Exxon Mobil. Was Exxon when I interviewed with them. And I was primarily looking at actually public accounting when I was graduating with the accounting degree, whether it was Arthur Anderson, Price Waterhouse, or Coopers & Lybrand at the time. Those ones I was focused on, and maybe some aerospace companies out of California. And Exxon came on campus. I thought, well, you know, might as well try to interview with them. They're a large company, and they gave me an interview in Houston, and then said, well, we have an opportunity for you in West Texas. And about the time they said that, I said, well, you know, you also in my Houston interview, you indicated you had an office in Denver. You know, that sounds really nice. Well, yeah, we do have an office in Denver, but we're not hiring anybody there. You'd be getting a job offer in Midland, Texas. Well, growing up in southern New Mexico, I thought, well, how different can Midland be? Never been there. How different can Midland be from, you know, Tularosa? You know, it's pretty different. Very flat. The best thing about it was that it was about a 5-hour drive back to the mountains, so I could go snow skiing during the wintertime. So took a job in Midland and spent about 6 years in West Texas, and then moved to Houston, and I spent the rest of my career in Houston. But I didn't stay in the accounting area. After getting to Houston, I went to law school part-time, and the great thing was the Exxon paid for it. So I was able to get a law degree, again with no debt, and was fortunate enough to get moved into the tax department for ExxonMobil, and where they had their own legal group. The regular law group didn't want to have anything to do with taxes. And if you've ever had, for those accounting majors, you'll understand why that the law group doesn't want to have anything to do with tax. So we had our own legal group, and I did that for 15 years. And the experience was phenomenal. because I traveled to Russia, Hungary, Mexico, Croatia, in Japan. And it was not just U.S. tax laws, it was having to deal with foreign tax laws, and thinking about growing up in a very small Spanish village, as I described, Tularosa, to ultimately traveling to Moscow or traveling to Sakhalin Island was pretty amazing. But as Matt said, are you intimidated by those other people that went to, whether it's Texas or A&M or Tech or Harvard? When you get to the law schools, then it gets very challenging. I was not intimidated. I was comfortable with myself, and the experience I had on the controller side with Exxon made it great for me to be in the tax side for the corporation. And so I was able to handle litigation against the IRS, handle litigation with several states, including the state of Alaska. So there are great experiences out there. Now, what's going on with the oil and gas industry? So unless someone's been hibernating for the last couple of years, you know the oil and gas business is booming. It really is booming. I read an article in preparing for my remarks here that they anticipate, and this is not just oil and gas jobs, but the ancillary jobs that go with it, that the production of unconventional oil and gas could generate as many as 2 million jobs in the next 2 decades. And that is phenomenal. That's a game changer. Now, you'll have some people in the U.S. government saying, you know, I helped produce that. And it's the oil and gas companies that are helping to produce that. It really is. Now, a lot of those jobs are more technical. They're the engineer. They're the oil field service companies. But as business majors, you are the support behind all that. Now, how do you get into the oil and gas industry? You know, Exxon doesn't interview here anymore. And if they do, they might interview on the engineering side, but not on the business school side. So you have to pursue it, whether it's a small company, whether it is going and working for an oil and gas company to get some experience before you possibly pursue one of the majors. Is working for the majors what you want to do? Not necessarily. There are some great jobs in the smaller oil and gas companies. And actually, you hear about the unconventional gas. A lot of that is being developed by your smaller companies. A lot by your larger, but there's some significant opportunities with oil and gas. And it's not just the oil and gas companies, it's the service companies that provide all the drilling and the equipment and all of that. So for those of you that don't know what is unconventional oil and gas, you know, I know when I graduated, and even when I interviewed for Exxon, I didn't have the faintest idea how oil and gas was produced. You know, someone could have said, well, are you familiar with the pumping unit? And honestly, I would have been like a deer in the headlights. I had no idea. So one of the things, if you're interested in the oil and gas industry, I encourage you to learn something about it. Either take an online course where you can learn something about it. And I don't know, at Texas Tech, I suspect that they have an oil and gas accounting class, would be my guess.
They have an energy commerce program.
Okay.
And we can't produce enough of them. Real good thing for Mexico State to look at.
Yeah, because I mean, if nothing else, that's your competition, is what these other schools are doing. And if this many jobs are being created within a single industry, you need to be on par or to be able to talk the lingo with someone, because if as an interviewer is there, if you're interviewing and someone else from another university can talk about it, even if in general terms, as an interviewer, they're going, oh, this guy is interested, this guy and lady would be interested in the oil and gas industry, because at least they've studied up on it. They've learned it. So that's something maybe that could be considered for the school.
The highest starting salaries in our business school are energy commerce majors. And so if we had one of those programs here, it would be a real good strategic.
And I asked several
I hate to
companies.
say that to you.
Yeah, I asked several companies. I said, what are you looking for in business graduates? And some of them were smaller, some were bigger. For Exxon Mobil, what they are looking for primarily is MBA students. That's just how they've approached it, good or bad. That's how they've approached it. Smaller companies are not necessarily looking for MBAs. But one of the things they've said, well, if it's not an accounting degree, you need to have a strong background in accounting, strong knowledge of accounting. No matter if you plan on going into the finance group for treasury, going into cost management, all those things, you're going to have to have a good accounting background for being in the oil and gas industry. So, willing to take any questions? Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.